7:37. When it comes to transport, the government has got lots to think about when MPs return after the summer break. There's the row over who gets to run the West Coast Main Line after Virgin Trains lost the franchise, and also whether to expand Heathrow Airport.
A senior Conservative MPs increased the pressure on David Cameron to abandon the government's opposition to a third runway at Heathrow Airport. Writing in the Daily Telegraph, Tim Yeo says the Prime Minister must ask himself whether he's man or mouse. And then there's the continuing controversy over the HS2, the high-speed rail link between London and Manchester and the North West. Let's talk now to the Transport Secretary, Justine Greeney. Good morning, Ms. Greeney.
Morning.
Thanks very much for joining us this morning. It's being suggested that you could sign off on the new West Coast Main Line contract as early as tomorrow. Are you prepared to do that, even though Virgin, who run the track at the moment, and the Labour Party is saying there should be actually a proper investigation into why the contract was not left with Virgin?
Well, this is a fair and very well-established process that all the parties within the bidding process bought into. It's been running for 15 months, so it's actually been quite a long-term process. We do plan to push on with signing the contract with First Group. And I do suspect that, although I've got a huge amount of respect for Virgin and the work that they've done on the line, I suspect that had they won the bid, that they would have been perfectly happy with the process.
They say, I'm sorry to interrupt, they do say they have dozens of questions which they've put to you which remain unanswered. For instance, about what guarantee there is that the £13 billion of payments to government will ever be paid by First Group, given their record in the past, and many other questions which have not been dealt with.
Well, we've shared with them all of the information that we're able to. Obviously, this is still a live process in the sense that we haven't yet signed the contract. And of course, there are also commercial confidentiality issues that, of course, aren't just for Virgin, but are for the other bidders involved. So we've shared the details that it's appropriate to share, and it's a fair and established process. It's a very robust process. The whole point of it actually being so robust is to make sure that it's not politicised, and it is handled fairly for all the bidders. Obviously, I understand that Virgin have raised their concerns right at the end of the process. They didn't during the process. And of course, there are legal remedies to them should they wish to take those forward.
OK, well, you've said that it is a live process and that you are going to push on with signing the contract. Does that mean that the contract gets signed tomorrow?
Well, the standstill period that we're in now, this pause, as it were, finishes later today, but this is a good contract for the taxpayer and for passengers.
OK, so are you going to sign it off? Is there any wiggle room here? Is there any? I mean, it's not just Virgin asking for a little bit of extra time. It's also the Transport Select Committee, a cross-party group of MPs wanting time to have a look at this. Are you going to give them time, or are you signing this off when you need to tomorrow?
We are going to get this signed off. The date of this contract award has been known since May last year, actually. I am in front of the Transport Select Committee in a couple of weeks' time, so they will, of course, be able to ask me about the nature of the bid then. But I think it's worth pointing out what is in First Group's contract. It's going to be more seats, new services to places like Telford, Shrewsbury, direct services, improved services to places like Blackpool, so more capacity, investment, £22 million in stations. So this is a really good deal for the taxpayer. And I think if we are going to move away from those above inflation fares, when we come to franchising some of these very lucrative lines, you've got to get a better deal for the taxpayer. That's what we've done, and that's why we'll be pushing ahead with the contract.
Right, that debate, we could talk about that for some time. Let's move on to other transport issues. Heathrow Airport. Tim Yeo, writing in the Telegraph today, saying the Prime Minister's got to make up his mind whether he's man or mouse and commit to a third runway at Heathrow, something that you are pretty opposed to. So what's your view on that?
I think there's a cross-party political consensus that having a third runway at Heathrow is not the right thing to do. It's not just the coalition government agreement that says that. The Labour Party now agree that too. Of course, there'll always be some people who probably don't share that political consensus. I think the key now is to look long-term and to look ahead into the future and say, well, what do we need in terms of capacity for our country if it's going to be successful? That's the process that we're about to kick off. And I do think that if the limit of Britain's desire for airport capacity in the future is essentially a 2.5 runway hub airport at Heathrow, and this third runway, as it's called, is actually just about half a runway in length. It can't take big planes. My sense is that that simply won't be enough to address our country's needs, and it's now time to look long term, think far more boldly, and get on with this question of capacity, and that's what we'll be doing in September when Parliament gets back.
All right, Justine Greening, Secretary of State for Transport, thank you.
Thank you.
17 minutes to 8. This is Breakfast. These are the main stories this morning.